Hey guys, hope everybody's having a fantastic day today. Whether you're watching this in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the evening, I'm glad you're here. And if you get the chance and you're so inclined, please hit that subscribe button below. It helps other people see the videos and lets them know when I release new videos. Tippy's just going to pass through here real quickly. But anyway, so today I won't waste any time. I wanted to go over one of the larger folders in my collection that I actually carry and use quite often, and it is the Cold Steel AD-10. The Cold Steel AD-10 is a full-size knife. It is thumb stud actuated with a back lock. So when you talk about a knife that's a handful, this knife gives me a full 4-finger grip with room to spare on the handle. It does give me a choil to choke up on if I want to use this very large blade, which we'll measure here shortly, and we'll get some dimensions on. The blade is S35VN, and the handles are G10. I don't know if you can see the texture on those, but they're pretty lightly textured. The G10 is done very well with the full steel frame or full steel liners, nice back spacer, and a back spring. Now, one thing about the AD-10, like a lot of other cold steels, is it is droppy. This one's a little unique in that it's a back lock and it's still very droppy. So what I do, instead of keeping my finger back here when I depress it, because it will come down and actually guillotine my finger, I keep my finger up towards this first choil, because that way the stop comes down and hits my finger. So if you see that, it dropped right to my finger and then drops down. Reverse flick it, again hit the button, drops to my finger, drops down. So again, the Cold Steel 4 Max, this one does have one mod on it. I got the Pops deep carry clip off Etsy. They make these clips in a couple of different finishes, and they do take on kind of a natural patina. It gives you a little bit more of a hot spot in the hand, but nothing that I consider problematic over the standard clip which they make, which is not deep carry. If you can see where this is mounted here, that's about where your clip's going to ride if it's not one of the deep carry clips. So again, this is the S35VN AD-10. Did I call this the 4 Max? We're getting ready to compare it to the 4 Max in size, but if I did, I apologize. It's the AD-10, the AD-15's little brother, and it has a little lanyard loop back here for people who like doodads. It is very fidgety for a big knife. I can sit here and play with it as long as I keep my finger in that spot. Drop shut, reverse finger flick, regular flick. You just got to watch to make sure you keep your finger up towards the front of that choil so that tang drops against your finger, not the blade, because it is very sharp. So let's get our NAFCO ruler and let's take a couple of dimensions here. Let's look at the blade from the longest point, and it's going to be 3 3/4. If I do it from the front up here, it's going to be right at 3 1/2. The handle's going to be right under 5 1/2, between 5 1/2 and 5 1/4. So if we say 6, so it's about a 9-inch overall knife, guys. The height of that blade is going to be 1.5 inches, and it is a thicker beast. So let's see what our behind the spine is. 0.15, and our handle is 0.65. I don't do behind the edge thickness because I can never get it, but we'll try it just for S and G's. I missed it. 0.20. Maybe, maybe not. Anyway, John R. Grateful Panic's calipers. Let's do a couple of quick size comparisons with some knives that we might be familiar with and some that we might not. So let's look at it against its big brother, the Cold Steel 4MAX. And you can tell that the AD-10 is stylistically very similar to the 4MAX, but it is quite a bit smaller. Let's look at it next to the Civivi Baby Banter. Much bigger than the Baby Banter. Let's look at it next to the Benchmade Bug Out. And the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. Guys, it's a little bit longer than the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. A great deal thicker. Let's look at it next to a couple of unconventional knives. Firstly being the Cold Steel AD-15. It's going to be longer than the AD-15, but that's going to run more in the same blade thickness and handle thickness overbuilt knife. Let's look at it next to Lee at Love Them Knives, Tucson Vandal. And the Vandal, whoops, let's get it in frame. The Vandal is going to be longer than the AD-10. The Vandal's also going to be thicker than the AD-10. And lastly, in my big knife collection, we will look at the Cold Steel, or the Max A Sandstorm, which is much bigger than the AD-10. So the AD-15 is going to be a little smaller, same blade stock. The Sandstorm is going to be right around the same thickness with a much longer blade, much thicker blade. But the Cold Steel AD-10, guys, I think fits a perfect spot in my collection, where the Cold Steel 4MAX is a great knife. I love it. It's a novelty that's also usable when I want to go chop stuff down. But if I'm going camping and I've got my Max A shoulder sling that has a sheath built into it, this knife fits perfectly in that sheath. So I look at this more of a pack knife. I don't look at this as a knife, even though it carries well in the pocket. I've got on khakis. This knife rides deep in the pocket. I don't really feel that it's there, even though it's a heavier knife. How heavy, you say? Very heavy. So yes, it is a full-size, thick knife. I will put some specs in the description that I will get off of one of the websites that we all like to go to. But if I were to recognize or recommend an overbuilt, multi-use, multi-grip survival knife, tactical knife, hunting knife, EDC knife, camping knife that was a folder, this does use the triad lock, one of the strongest locks allegedly in the knife game. So it's not just a back lock, it is the triad lock. Has an extra lock up there. I'm a big fan, guys. I think the Cold Steel AD-10 is a win. It's a knife I'm glad is in my collection. I have 3 Cold Steels in my collection now. This one, the AD-15 that I think we've done a review on, and then the American Lawman, which we'll do a review on. It is a great EDC version of a knife like this, not quite as overbuilt. But guys, I'll ask Please subscribe if you haven't below. It does really help me out, and hopefully it'll give you guys some value when I release new videos. If you enjoy the content, most importantly, I ask, look out for the guy or gal to your left. Please look out for the guy or gal to your right. Please go forward with love in your heart. Choose debate over hate. Till we all meet again, peace. I love you all.